My guest today says that violence is normal for 5 out of the 7 billion people in the world today. That is a shocking statistic. To help us understand it, I'm joined by George Canjanathoppil, the CEO of International Justice Mission Canada, a global organization that helps protect people in poverty from human trafficking. Annie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. I love the work of IJM. And I was so shocked by that statistic. What do you mean when you say that 5 out of 7 billion people experience violence as something normal?
The World Justice Project had an incredible survey, the results of it, which was published recently, and they actually said 6 billion people wow. out of the 7 billion people have been experiencing a rapid erosion of the rule of law. So when I say the rule of law, is basically people having the ability to access the public justice system. So 78% of the countries around the world are dealing with this rapid recession. And it's just a game changer for those who are in the space trying to tackle violence, because since 2016, it has only been rapidly increasing. When I say that we have normalized this, that's another conversation altogether, because, you know, when you look at or when you read news about rapid violence happening around the world, if you would imagine that these people are created in the image of God and they would automatically be your brothers and sisters, and you would not, you know, allow this to happen. You would not, if you're not filled with rage and anger with what is going on, then we have indirectly normalized violence of this sort.
Don't you think maybe one of the reasons that we're not filled with rage and anger about it is because we actually are filled with rage and anger, but also helplessness? And when you feel helpless, you just withdraw, right? Because like, what can I do about it? Like, I can't, you know, stop Russia from invading Ukraine. I can't fix the world's evil.
Yeah. Yes and no. Because if you had known that 48 billion worth of products that are coming into Canada are made by either children or through forced labor, then you would think again before you are making some decisions. True. But at the same time, you know, it is important for us to actually get into those conversations and have those hard discussions to figure out what is it that I can do. And when I say that we have normalized it, I'm thinking of, say, online sexual exploitation of children. Online sexual exploitation of children, we did a scale of harm study with an international university recently, specifically focusing on Philippines. It basically, the research revealed that 1 out of 100 children are exposed to online sexual exploitation, which basically puts the demand-side offender, of which Canada is the top 4 in the world wow. as a consumer, benefiting from this crime. And it would take one decision, truthfully, Cheryl, for us to say, well, I'm going to use artificial intelligence to filter out child sexual explicit content out of, you know, anything that has been streamed into this country. One decision. But there is a whole lot of dynamics that plays around it. Let me take it a little further. If we are thinking of these million children who are being trafficked and trapped into this vicious cycle of violence, if a person is if the perpetrator is getting caught where this violence is happening, and that violence is getting streamed into Canada, he gets lifetime imprisonment, he or she. But here, it is 3 months to 6 months to maximum 1 year. So the value
That's for someone who's looking at child porn.
The one who's creating this demand.
Wow.
So the value of the life. So the entire foundation of this is set on, well, your life is not worth that much.
I know we don't take it seriously here in Canada, and I've covered child porn over the years, and I've talked to investigators who spent years putting together a case at great trauma to themselves, because, you know, we can't talk about what child porn really is on television. It's so beyond what you can imagine in its depravity and violence. And then the person, you know, was let off on, you know, that was a creative expression, you know, some violent, horrible, abusive writing that they did. And so she ended up quitting her job and having PTSD. You know, we don't take it seriously here in Canada, but help us understand what online exploitation is, because I've heard of it happening in terms of a pedophile going online and then directing a session with a child to do certain acts live online. Is that essentially how it's happening?
Exactly that. And like I said, Canada and Canadians have kind of ranked as the top 4 consumers of this kind of violence.
Shocking.
It is shocking. Because for, $1 or maybe a little more than that, you can basically, use the online platform and direct the kind of act that these children, and the
abuse of children.
Abuse of children.
Yeah.
Between the age of 2 months to 11 years. Now, I love that to sink in. 2 months. I mean, these kids are still in diapers.
It's so sick.
It is sick, and that is why, and as a mother of twin daughters myself, I'm consistently appalled that we have not taken extreme measures to stop this instantly.
Agree. And, it's your job to get people to care, essentially. That's your job. How challenging is it, and how do you get people to care?
The approach that International Justice Mission has is very succinct, and it is very clear. Identifying, rescuing, bringing them to physical rescue, rehabilitation. The rehabilitation journey is long because you have been serving this master in whatever capacity for generations sometimes, to a point where you're looking at the master as your lord, and the Stockholm Syndrome, whatnot. So even if you're going in with, and we do this entirely in partnership with the public justice system, we do not go break open doors. No, we do this with the public justice system because only then would it be sustainable. So when a police officer goes in to ask these questions, they're mortified or like completely, adoring their master who has abused them for all these years. It is hard to get an honest testimony from them. And then to take them on to this journey of rehabilitation is such a nuanced work because they did not know a life beyond this. Or they have basically surrendered to this life with no sense of self-worth, absolutely no dignity left in them because everything that they thought that they could rely on has been taken away from them. Because what these masters do is they leave the body to work, but break their spirit inch by inch in smithereens. So you're dealing with a life like that and then walking a journey with them, allowing them to understand that their life is actually worth something. It can be valued. They're beautiful inside out. And then walking through them. And then them becoming survivor leaders, bringing others into that journey. So identification, rescue, rehabilitation, and repairing the public justice system, working in partnership with the police, with everyone, with the judges, the lawyers, making sure that this entire broken justice system can be rectified with their leadership. They are the heroes. It's not us.
Yeah, and I know you've trained police, you've worked in those spaces to, you do have to change the structures that allow human trafficking to happen. And, I think, seeing somebody that you've rescued go back to the life, and I've had that as well. I've interviewed children who've been rescued who did eventually go back. They were reassaulted, and then that just broke their spirit one last time. Yeah. What motivates you and IJM to keep going? I think it's a heartbreaking space. And I think people like you who do this work are true heroes. You face things that, like you said, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to see it. We want to pretend it's not there. When you say Canada's top 4, we don't want to face that.
Yeah. So what allows us to stay in this place with hope is the result, really. I mean, we've been in this space for 25 years. And I can safely say that what IJM is doing is working. We have seen the reduction of the prevalence of crime, some places 86%, 90%, and we've seen zero prevalence in some communities. Literally, it is
eradicating.
It's impossible to find a child, forced into commercial sexual exploitation in the project areas that we've worked in a particular region. And the same with labor trafficking. So it is working. But what actually allows us to sustain hope and go back relentlessly is the fact that these survivors are now leaders and they're taking on the good fight. And we are seeing broken public justice system not just functioning well, but also setting an example globally on how this can be done. So this works. It is impossible for me, after almost, a decade and a half of being in the space with IJM, for me to kind of say, oh, I'm giving up now because, it's just hard. No. It is working, and we are very well on our way to protecting 500 million people by 2030.
I love that is your goal. That is so ambitious. How many so far, and how far do you have to go?
So we have a beautiful metric. I mean, that's going to take an entire show for me to take you through. But 10 million people have been protected already. Wow. But what works with IGM's model is that the numbers double and triple because of the investment that we have done over these years. So it is not like you need to go back 25 years to get to the kind of result you've seen in a particular country. No. And this is also happening in a space where traffickers are super creative, right? So we are getting more agile. We are getting better. Governments are stepping up. Governments are beginning to say, no, this is not on. And there is a movement that is being built around the world, led by survivors, led by individuals like you. I mean, you volunteered with IGM 20 years ago, and for you to now sit down and say, well, you guys have traveled a journey.
It's wonderful to see all that's happened. And, we've been talking a lot about sexual exploitation, but I know labor is huge too. And I just have to mention Wonka. Yeah. This is a huge film, family friendly. A lot of people have seen it. I don't think they realized that that was a classic representation of labor trafficking in that movie.
Thank you for noticing that and calling that out. And I wish there are more movies made in a way that Wonka was made so that people can meaningfully understand, oh my goodness, it is this simple. He was tricked, he was lured, and he cannot get out. This is exactly what happens in labor trafficking.
Paying a debt, being charged interest and paying a debt you can't pay.
Yes, you can't repay and you're forever trapped because it works in the favor of your master. And I'm calling the master a master because that's how he is. He owns this individual. He can do whatever he wants to with this individual. So they can't leave. People have taken I've dealt with cases where, there were multi-generational multiple generations of people trapped in this. They took a loan of less than $10 for a medical purpose. So this man gets in, his son gets in, his son's son gets in, and his son's son's son gets in. So to a point where they don't know a life outside of this.
This is normal.
It is normal to a point where they still haven't repaid that $10 that they have taken maybe 70, 80 years ago.
Right, because it just keeps growing into this huge debt.
You have a medical expense, it adds on. You've eaten some food so that you can go back and work one time a day. That's the only meal you've had. Your debt increases. It's crazy.
There is so much evil happening in the world. And, you are one of the people that is standing in the way of it, saying no, changing things. 500 million people by 2030. We need to pray for your protection of your team. We need to pray for the empowerment of your work. Thank you so much for being here and making us face the things sometimes we don't want to face and know that we can make a difference.
Thank you for caring enough to actually give this a segment and your time, because it matters and it should matter. It should continue to be in the front center of a Canadian conscience. Thank you for taking the lead on that.
It does matter. Thank you, Anu.
Thank you, Cheryl.